A Father's Love, Episode 28, The Oppression by the Authorities. Dad sobbed for some minutes as he looked down. He eventually looked up. His eyes were soaked in tears and red like metal in a hot fire. Still confused, but managed to say something. "I'm sorry, Dad, for saying the wrong thing." Dad suddenly smiled. "It's okay, son," Dad cleared his throat. "I once lived under a dictatorship before moving to this country." My eyes suddenly became wide. I didn't know whether to cry or to console Dad or to rejoice with him. "How did you make it out?" I was in junior high or high school when the whole scenario began to unfold. It was under the dictatorship of General Sani Abacha. "A military man?" I asked. Dad nodded in agreement. "What was it like?" "Not pretty. He rose to power through a coup." "What's a coup?" "It's basically taking power through a non-democratic process, usually by the use of violence." It all makes sense now. I was wondering whether he would contest for the presidency as a civilian or military person. He changed the law to keep himself in power, then started killing all political opponents. He paid people to show up at rallies supporting his presidency. Dad paused, and at that point I patted him on the back. "Why the need for the rallies though?" "To make himself look good to the rest of the world." "And the world believed that? Why couldn't the masses' welfare be used as a means to look good to the world?" "An evil mind will only know how to do evil." "Can you describe what general welfare was like?" Dad gave a deep sigh, and I noticed the pale sad reaction was coming back. "It's okay, Dad. You don't have to. It's not easy remembering and talking about it, but I have to reveal to you this part of my life. The public suffered. Public servants' salaries weren't paid, laws that protected people's rights were ignored or terminated, corruption and many other vices prevailed. Worst of all, security was at an all-time low. If people weren't paid, why couldn't they protest or strike? The strike became regular but didn't change anything. Protests weren't allowed and people got killed when any form of protest was staged. Back to our discussion in terms of obeying authorities because they're placed there by God. Will you say that God put such a person in authority? It's hard to say God put such a person in authority, but one thing I would say is that God was aware of the scenario and he made a way. How did you manage to submit to authority under such a brutal regime? I was mostly shielded by the authority of my parents, but I know that my parents had to obey until the point where such obedience contradicted the will of God. Any good example? My mom missed so many financial opportunities and promotions because he wouldn't accept bribes or circumvent the rules. How long were citizens supposed to submit to the authorities before they started taking action? You don't wait to take action. You keep doing whatever is possible within your means until you can do no more. What were examples of what your parents had to do differently? When my mom couldn't collect bribes and missed out on financial gains, she almost got stuck because salaries weren't paid. She started doing some mid-sized farming behind the house, which was a means of getting food. Wow, that's smart. So what happened to this president at last? He died of food poisoning by the prostitutes he hired. Wow, that was a miraculous ending. As worse as it was, there were some that had little options in terms of dealing with rogue authorities. Really?